Even with all the right notes and chords, something still might be missing from your blues playing. When you focus entirely on the fretboard, and we often do that, we'll forget about the part of the music that gets people moving, the rhythm. This is especially true if you're playing acoustic blues by yourself. If you're not paying attention to the rhythm and intentionally trying to make your parts groove, you're just missing out. And in this lesson, I'll show you how to add the snare effect to your acoustic blues. It's a simple technique that creates a drummer-like backbeat. You're going to learn how to incorporate this into both simple and more complex rhythms while holding down the groove. Instead of just playing a blues progression, this technique can help you create that full band sound that makes your playing come alive, even and especially when you're playing by yourself. So let's dig in. So many of us get caught up in what's happening on the fretboard. We forget about the rhythm entirely, but that leaves your blues sounding kind of one-dimensional and lacking the groove that the blues is known for. So how do we add a little groove to our parts? Here's an idea. Let's approach the guitar as if we were a drummer. I'm in drop D tuning for this lesson, but we're going to focus more about what the picking hand is doing here. So any tuning will really work to help you get this technique down. What we're going to do is mimic the sound of a snare drum using two different techniques. For the first one, pretend you're holding an egg in the palm of your hand, just a loose fist, and then take your picking hand and just drop it straight in onto the string. So we're coming into the guitar. And when we do, and we hold that position, kind of like we're hugging the guitar, still holding that egg, we get that snap sound from the strings just kind of snapping up against the fretboard. Right? That's one way we can get this snare drum happening. It's a lighter sound. It's not the heaviest attack, right? You just picture a light snare drum hit with this. So practice that. Play a bass and then snare and then back and forth, just like this. When you fret a chord, you might get some sense of a melody, especially when we level up to the next technique. So still holding onto that egg, we're going to take this into the next level by coming this way with a strum down toward the floor. But as we do, we're going to open up and drop that egg. So we're going to flick the fingers across the strings. This is really a two-parter because just doing that just gives you a strum, right? But when you combine that with a mute, by laying your hand across the strings, you get a sense of that snare drum crack. Again, one with more attack than this, right? This is a little soft. It's great. You can use it in different parts when the part calls for it. But when you want more attack, try this scratch. That's the one we're going to focus on in the remainder of this lesson. And it's really happening with the top part of my nails coming down and getting that scratch as I'm opening up. But the moment that I'm doing that, I am chopping down on the strings with my palm, and that mutes it out completely. So do the same thing. Bass, snare, bass, snare, bass, snare, bass, snare. You can dial this in to your level of attack. Certain tunes, certain riffs are going to call for more. So get a little bit more heavy-handed as you approach the strings, and some are just nice and relaxed. We want to build in that variation, but the basic technique is hold on to that egg and drop it as a flicking motion with the fingers scratches through the strings, and you're choking down on those strings with your palm. All right, can you feel how this technique just mimics the crack of a snare drum? It's a very punchy technique that can level up your rhythm parts, but the technique isn't useful on its own. We've got to place it in key spots in a bluesy riff. Let's keep this simple at first. We'll put this technique to work in a drop D blues riff, but we want to hit beats 2 and 4 for our snare effect, just like a drummer would. We're going for that backbeat groove. Remember, we're in drop D tuning. That is going to be important for this example. And I'm fretting a D major on the fretboard. Kind of. This middle finger is really just hovering over the F sharp, so I'm not really playing it. I just want to mute this first string out. It gives this a little bit too bright of a sound. If I hit that string and that note, I don't want that. Plus, I need that middle finger to move around and play a few of the notes in the bass, as we're going to see. So make sure you've got that muted out. A good way to do that is just by leaning back just a little bit with your ring finger if you fret the D major this way. So we won't get that first string ringing. All right, with that out of the way, let's do the riff. We're going to play the open 6th string, then we're going to come down and do our scratch. Then we're going to the C note on the 5th string, 3rd fret, and then scratch. Then we're going up to the open 4th string, scratch, 6th string. See how that middle finger being free really matters here? We've used it twice on the C and then now on the F, which is, remember, we're tuned down a full step. So we're playing that on the 3rd fret of the 6th string and then scratch. So the pattern is just simply the bass, scratch, bass, scratch, bass, scratch, bass, scratch. Cycle through that and really give it some time to get that snare cracking the way you want. Let's give a listen to the full example. To me, the snare hit takes this simple riff up to the next level, and the key is really hitting beats 2 and 4 consistently. That helps make this groove and it helps it stay tight. So start slowly and focus on timing rather than speed. You want that snare effect to become second nature over time, but when you're ready, let's kick this up a notch. Start by accenting beats 2 and 4. That gets you in the game and it's a perfect place to start. But when you think about how a good drummer might play a part, they wouldn't only play on just those 2 beats. The snare might get some other hits in there and embellish the rhythm a little bit. This can be tricky when we're trying to mimic this on the guitar, that's for sure, because we've already got our hands full with the notes, the chords, the picking, but we can add a few rhythmic embellishments to liven things up. We're going to dress our rhythm part up in 2 ways. First off, we're going to stop with the snare bit right at the end and lean into a bluesy little tag ending on our riff, like this. Right here. So what's happening is, instead of chucking along on beat 4 with the snare, I'm going to hit the C on the 5th string, the open 4th string, and then crash down into that F on the 3rd fret of the 6th string, give it a little blues pull before starting the riff over again. But you may have noticed the other element that we added here, and it's this upstroke after our snare hit. It's kind of like a snare double hit. What I'm doing is that drop the egg motion and scratching through the strings, but on the and of beat 2 and the and of beat 4, except for that last bass tag, I'm bringing the index finger back up while the strings are still muted with my palm. We get this sort of boom, kaka, sort of sound. So we still have that rhythmic element, and the 2 is still the main accent, or the 4, but we're just embellishing it with that quick hit right on the heels of it. And when we put these 2 things together, we get the full riff. To really get it down, try grooving your way through this riff and moving it through a blues progression. Here's an example that I came up with, and if you're a premium member, you'll find the tab for this groove in the library under lesson ID TB486. So we know how adding that snare can really take your rhythm parts to the next level, but having that backbeat in your back pocket is just one part of developing a killer sense of time. And so many of us struggle with timing, and we kind of wonder why our playing doesn't really sound quite right. And the difference often comes down to this one overlooked fundamental skill. Click to watch Tuesday Blues number 346 next, and I'll show you the practice method that improves everything you play with this skill in mind. I'll see you there. Until then, practice smart and play on.